Father, as we gather tonight in this room to conduct the business of our community, we're also here to thank you and praise you for the blessings that you've given each and every one of us, how you've blessed our community. Tonight, we welcome your spirit of peace and the spirit of unity into our midst. And we thank you that you are a God we can trust. And we want to please you in every way. And so, Lord, tonight, receive our thanksgiving and our praise. Help us do what would be pleasing in your sight and to build up our community. Lord, I thank you for each and every person here tonight. I thank you for those that serve on this commission, on the city commission, who take their time out of their lives to come and lead us. And so bless each and every one of them. And tonight, Jesus is Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? No.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Lambert, second by Commissioner Hatch to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next, we have public comments. This is a time where citizens are encouraged to speak publicly. We request that you come to the podium, state your name and address, and speak respectfully, and that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. The commission will listen and consider your comments, but no immediate action will be taken at this time. And this particular public comments time is separate from the public hearing for the revenue neutral rate, just to be clear.
Is that like the tax increase, or is that later?
That would be later. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on then to the discussion agenda, the Community Activities Center.
Mayor and Commissioners, since we all know the background of where I won't spend too much time going through that stuff, of the blueprint to build that we've been following since May. The original $2.5 million potential grant, we knew of the 1.25 million that you had to have secured. There was a lot of delight, mistake, and thought of requirements. But so originally thought the sales tax bill would show the popular opinion, popular support of the project would happen in November, and that pleased the Chamber of Commerce committee, and then that money we pay back through potentially community or a USDA low interest loan or a bond structure. We originally were going after looking towards the USDA community facilities loan to pay back that portion of the sales tax with the sales tax, excuse me. As we've gone along through this process, additional requirements, additional knowledge has both come to light and changed in our minds. We've learned of additional requirements for the grant itself, including a third-party grant administrator, environmental review, preliminary architect report by a local architect, not the architect working with the Commerce, which was Hutton. The design, bid, build, delivery method must be used, and the requirement of the Davis-Bacon wages for such project would be in effect. We began reaching out to the North Central Regional Planning Commission regarding the third-party administration and learned of their fees themselves for not only the application for the Blueprint to Build project, but also a potential USDA loan that they would have to be involved with as well as the third-party administrator, including all the application fee and environmental review itself. We would have to work through a competitive RFP process to hire an architect. And therefore, would be a fee to perform the preliminary architect reviews. However, architect that we would hire would not be available to do such review until Hutton releases the 75% bridge documents that were supposed to be released at the end of August. We found out about 10-15 minutes ago that they are available now upon request. So they haven't been released to us yet. I think it's probably a formal request. Did they say the process of that? Yeah.
Requested.
So, that has just come to light here in the last day or so. To get those documents and then develop, move forward with that process. Last week, after we went through all those, we got the strategic doing committee back together to start this whole process. I don't remember how long ago that was when we first started. Was it almost 4 years? Almost 4 years, yes. So we got them back together. It had been a while since we had all met and discussed where we are with the blueprint to build scenario. And as part of all those, they said ongoing facts that we've been getting from blueprint to build, the assumption or the knowledge of our sake was that the $2.5 million was the first money in to catapult a fundraising effort. That is not the case. That is the last dollar in loan or grant now. So all the money to be eligible for that grant has to be secured in hand to be able to be awarded with it. Pledges do not count on private donations. All grant writing would have to be secured, not just awarded. Everything like that, and that still would have to be done before the November 14th deadline. So we're looking at a $17 million project, $2.5 million grant. We'd have to have $14.5 million secured in hand in the next 8 weeks to be eligible for that blueprint to build grant. Affirmative sales tax vote would not count, but except for a successful loan application or bonded amount would count. Like I said, we met with the strategic doing and want to confirm or adjust from what their thoughts were, and they did affirm that the scope of the project is still what they wanted. I would say from what Brenda had just told me that they are flexible, but the scope of the program spaces is still very, very accurate from what we originally planned and wanted. They do not believe that 8 weeks is realistic to raise $14.5 million, which is pretty accurate, I think so. So they did meet with us meet after our strategic doing to come up with a also word for committee, fundraising committee, of who would headline that, since the city is not legally able to headline that portion of it. We have not heard from our director. I don't know if Brenda has where that meeting went. If anything else was still in process of how we're going to go about that part of it. So with all that being said, they did not, or they would recommend not going down the blueprint to build path any longer. If we did not go down the blueprint to build path, would give us a few more months for the fundraising effort. We could drop some of those requirements that come with the federal program, including the Davis-Bacon wages, the loan fees for the third-party administrative fees, and other assessments such as that, environmental review. So that was their recommendation. That's the last week when we had our last meeting. Anything else you want to add?
Just the CDBG program requires us to do a competitive request for proposal for architectural services. We think that that's appropriate to do anyway. If we stay with the blueprint to build, though, the content of that proposal goes one direction. If we decide not to do blueprint to build, the content of that proposal goes a different direction. So tonight we're just needing your direction on, based on this information, whether to stay down the blueprint to build path or to pull back from that and go on our own separate from that.
I think I wonder, of course, things have changed and they continue to change and evolve. And is it necessary to be so hard and fast, knowing full well that things could change again? And also knowing that there's probably no community out there, I would imagine, that is ready under these new guidelines. So is it prudent then to wait and see the success or failure of that sales tax initiative and then move forward with decisions? I feel like rushing into decisions have kind of made this a little clunkier, could we wait? Is there any need to make that decision tonight?
So as Chris mentioned, we're about 8 weeks out from our vote, 9 weeks out from the deadline for the final application. We feel like the vote, if it passes, is going to be indicative of popular support. And if that passes, we feel like that may make it easier to work toward private donations and fundraising, because it shows that the community is behind the project and that garners support. That also bodes well for grant applications, to say we have community support, we have a sales tax vote, we're able to raise this much, we need this much more. The challenge becomes timing. So you're right, if we wait a little bit and we continue down this path, they might push the deadline back maybe a month or two possibly. But if we continue down the path, we're going to need to spend real dollars that we hadn't budgeted for with this process. So those real dollars include the application fee that NCRCP would charge us about $1,500, their environmental review, which is about $4,000, preliminary architectural report, which is about another $4,000. All of those things are required to submit the final application. None of those expenses are reimbursable through the grant. The grant administration fee of $40,000 is reimbursable through the grant, and that means that's $40,000 that would go toward construction of the project. So those are some choice points to have to make. The other piece is the going after the community facilities loan or the bonds. I think, Ash, you mentioned last time, how long is it going to take us to raise that 10 million out of sales tax? It's going to take us 10 years. So just like other projects, we borrow the money up front, either through bonding or community facilities loan, and then we repay those bonds or that loan through the sales tax collection over the next 10 years. So we would need to go down one of those two paths right now to secure that amount of money right now. In order to ensure that we have those funds right away, one option would be to go ahead and bond for a little bit higher amount, and then knowing that that could be repaid with any grant funding or private donations that we get. But that's a decision point on our part. Another thing that we could work through is to go back and reduce the scope. The Strategic Doing Committee did say that they wanted to keep that same program of spaces that we've been discussing, which includes the separate dedicated pickleball courts and all the other scope that we have in there, the walking track, the gym space, the tot lot jungle gym. But one thing that we could do is go back and reduce those spaces. I think one option, an easy option, would be take off the dedicated pickleball and share that space with the gyms. It could be done. It creates less opportunity for each group to use the space. There's always a potential that, since they were one of the first groups that talked to us about this, that we may lose potential donors and funding sources if there's not a dedicated space. So I think there's options on all of it. If we wait to kind of play that game, we probably need to continue down the path as if we're going to take blueprint to build. We can't administer that grant. There are certain things that we would need our grant administrator to do on our behalf. And so one of the items that's later on your agenda is the grant agreement with North Central Regional Planning Commission. The longer we wait to engage with them, the shorter amount of time that they have to do that work for us on our behalf. So we could wait a couple weeks and see what happens, but we are kind of playing chicken. Did I answer your question in a very long-winded way?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What's the cost savings of not doing the blueprint to build?
We estimate it to be about $2 million not doing it. So that would include, if you take 17 million, which is our estimated project construction cost, and you multiply that by 15%, you get about $2 million. The Blueprint to Build grant requires Davis-Bacon wages, which are estimated to increase the cost by about 15%, which would be about $2 million. We also saved $40,000 in grant administration. We saved the $4,000 in preliminary architectural report. We saved the $4,000 in environmental review, and we saved the $1,500 in application fee.
That Blueprint to Build, this is a new program, right?
Yeah.
So they're gonna be changing the requirements again. We've been through this with other grants. I think we're better off not doing it. It'll be, if it's good, it'll be there next year. Hopefully we'll have the sales tax passed, the money raised.
As with any CDBG grant, any work that is done on the project prior to this grant award is not eligible for grant reimbursement expense. So if we were to proceed with the community activity center on our own and we applied for the grant next year, we could only use it for the portion of the project that wasn't yet started or wasn't yet funded.
I do think that the Blueprint to Build grant was an excellent catalyst to really elevate this conversation. I think for us to put some of the planning in place that's gotten us this far. I also have started feeling like it's becoming just as limiting as it is encouraging. If we're really talking about relatively even money, and that we actually have more options or flexibility by not pursuing the Blueprint to Build and doing it more independently. I like that. I like that flexibility. One of the most consistent concerns that I hear from people that like this in theory is kind of, I think, the danger that we've run into, I think, as a community as a whole, and that there's a lot of different silos being operated. And that I think when we have seen projects that have been successful, it literally is an overlap of multiple organizations benefiting from a singular project. And so I do hear a lot of support for making the floors something that could be supportive of school events, of overlapping the lining of a singular floor that would support volleyball and basketball and pickleball. I would be concerned to hear that what I hear from too many folks, I think, in this community too often, if I don't get my way, then I'm out. And not a willingness to look at the greater good about how can we get this done for everybody. So I'm really hopeful that if we do listen to people that are talking about being concerned about the cost of this, that they are able to support perhaps a scaled down version of this that would still achieve really the goals that we're working towards, which is creating a community activity center that creates space for generations to engage, which doesn't necessarily mean that it all has to be in a separate space. It may take some coordination, it may take some flexibility, but I think that's what we're seeing and being told is going to be necessary in order for projects to be successful. I think that we're able to achieve that by moving over. I mean, I don't know that we are necessarily doing anything that moves us away from the Blueprint to Build grant, other than that we're not actively taking those steps, which we will need to take no matter what if we're going to move this project forward. So I would agree with Ashley then, though, that I'd like to make a specific decision to do it or not without knowing whether the taxpayers are going to support it. And the timeline's always been a little bit, we have to do this first before we can do this, but we can't do that until this happens. Right? So it's always been a little bit wonky with that. Mostly you can quote wonky. It's the word I'm using here.
WONKY.
Yes. But I think it does give us an opportunity to kind of step back and look at what do we need to do to make this most successful so that our voters have the best information possible when they go.
One of the other benefits, if we step forward, potential cost savings, the Blueprint to Build requires us to use the design bid build delivery method. And we've seen what's happened on our own projects with numbers of bids that happen. And a lot of contractors, especially commercial contractors that build these kind of facilities, really prefer the construction manager at-risk delivery method. What that could do for us, if we're able to use that, is to engage a contractor early on along with our architect to try to figure out where any conflicts to savings happen. It can also make the contractor give us a guaranteed maximum price, and then they're at risk if they go over that. If we stay with blueprint to build, we don't have that luxury. So then any potential changes are subject to change orders, which traditionally, if they add to the scope of the project, meaning add money, they also come at a 10 to 15% premium traditionally. So that's another potential savings to be able to engage with one of those firms. And I know we've talked with several. I know McCown Gordon used that delivery method on the hospital as well as with the college facility. They've done projects here. That is one method that Hutton does too. They have in-house architects as well. They do. We went with Jones Gill and Renz for a preliminary feasibility study. They partnered with both of those companies before and have had success with projects as well. So there's options out there for that.
Another thing with, with the vote being 8 weeks away, they have to know exactly what they're voting for, building wise, structure wise, and without being able, especially able to get those other documents, it's hard to put something together that's exactly tailored to what the Ranger Field would need. So that's another obstacle that we're still waiting on that keeps delaying it. And if we delay it further, then where does that lead us? Will leave us before a potential vote, when we all know that the vote is a necessity for the project to become fruition. So
I would agree with, am I allowed to talk? I'd agree with Ashley that I wish we wouldn't have to hurry. And Blueprint to Build is the one that's putting all of that hurry on us. And all of this is moot if it doesn't pass. So I think we have to back off and say, what do we need to make this pass? What information does the public want? And what do they need to see in order to make an informed decision and hopefully a positive decision? I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't say that. So what can we get done and what can we offer to the general public before the vote so that they can make an educated vote? Because again, we can try to do all of that, but it's all moot if it doesn't pass. We didn't need to do it in the first place if it didn't pass. So I think we just need to figure out what we need to do to get the best information out and the most accurate information out to voters.
So I would say go that route, find out what you need to do, a plan. We've had plans, and put it before the voters, show them what they're gonna get.
And of course, the dollar is gonna matter to a lot of them too, so
Right,
that would have to be
right.
attached, right?
I think if you have a project that checks more boxes and costs less, the odds of passing are increased.
I also think getting the word out of the sunsetting option is huge too. I think that will really appeal to people, that's an option. But there's the challenge of getting that out, just like there's the challenge of getting any kind of information out about anything.
sure. That's one of the things when you talk about the PASHA certified areas, we don't know the cost of that. It's going to go up if you make it bigger. Until we got those plans and got with an architect to adjust that. Would it be an offset of the other areas? I don't know. But with any expansion, price is going to go up. So that's another key factor.
But if it ends up not being as much of an expansion because we take space, we overlap space, we find an efficiency of space, and it wouldn't necessarily mean that there would be an expansion. It would just be a shifting of the space that we're already planning for, which maybe end up being an overall reduction because we don't need the additional.
The total square footage.
Right. So, I mean, that's what I'm hearing from a lot of folks though, is that if it's, why are we doing this if we can't do that? And why can't we do that? And that's a good question that I don't have an answer for. But people need to know what they're talking about, and we need to know what we're talking about.
Chuck, I agree with you. This is going to take, there's been kind of a reluctance to give up
the original ideas. And it will take a shift in thinking, and everybody has to just be open to it. I think in order for this to be successful.
I think that's what the blueprint to build led us to, because you remember our original plan was quite a bit larger, so a lot of those aspects were cut out with this plan to where it probably fits us better. Especially when we first started not knowing the price or the auto wants, and then we'll tailor back from those wants. The simple manageable.
We started out at 54,000 square feet. We're down to 35,000 square feet right now. If we take off the pickleball area, that was about 6,000 square feet. So then we're at 29,000 square feet. So that just kind of give you an idea of where we've been to where we're at now. So,
And how much has the price change from the original square footage to the second square footage?
it did not change a lot, and part of that's because we're 2 years down the road again, and there's certain things that you can save on, and there's certain things that you can't. So a lot of it has to do with the timing, but you're right.
But I think that's really good information for you to know when people are asking you, what are you doing? You know, have you tried it all? Because that's what they always want to know is it's too expensive. What have you done? You know, well, right there, it's like you said, from 53 to whatever you just said, 29. So we've already started trying to do what we can.
And we are, I mean, our group is used to budgeting conservatively. We do that all the time, even with budget study sessions. So we are working on very conservative estimates. We don't want to end up upside down when this actually comes in. We want to end up better than what we told the voters so that we can sunset that sales tax early, for example. So.
Well, I think there were things in the original plans that maybe if we look at it again, we don't really need those because we have access to community meeting rooms, other places in town. So maybe we don't need that. Maybe we could use that for pickleball or whatever, you know. A little rearranging, I guess he's saying, what's in the building.
So am I hearing you that you'd like us to go back to our strategic doing committee and we'll look at the scope to see what we're willing to pare down? And then if you tell us tonight to kind of step away from blueprint to build, we go work with or start asking questions of some of those either architects or construction managers to say, give us a better ballpark. Can we get this down? Can we crank this under 15, for example? Is that what I'm hearing you guys are asking us to do?
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I think this sounds like it's just not the project that we want, honestly.
The overall project.
The overall
or going
project,
down
I think
campus?
that one of the biggest hindrances was the fact that we wouldn't be able to host CASHA. Did I say that right? I'm not
Acacia.
Asia, the A is long, activities in it. And I think that's really something that needs to be looked into. And then it could be used for school events.
There is a challenge with that as far as just the regular school events, maybe tournament play, but there's a lot of students that play junior varsity and varsity. And so the space between the high school and where Razor Field is located is not ideal for those back-to-back type of games. It makes it difficult. From the standpoint of making that workable, not that it wouldn't still serve some purpose to have it as overflow. And it also, I mean, depending on people's desire to have it be able to use for the school, then there's a conflict with just the regular community using it and the school using it, because anytime there are school events, then the community is not going to be able to use it. That was kind of the same thing we ran into with trying, the idea of partnering with a gym with the high school was that it would be difficult to do that because the school is the primary use of that, and then the community is secondary, which is kind of already the situation that the community is in. So,
We rely on the school gyms 100% for our recreation programming, and then if there's any travel league stuff that they require at 100%. As far as the gym courts go.
and they've been excellent and partners in that for, allowing that. But I mean, it still, for them causes conflict, I think, and just for programming in general.
And I think that that's a little bit maybe, I don't know that much of this is ideal. And I think that if we hold out for what is ideal, we'll never see this come to fruition. And I maybe we don't host tournaments where they have multiple events, but maybe we are able to host events that we use that as a viable tournament space, or not tournament space, but just a game space. But there may be some coordinating that we need to do between the community using it and the school using it. I think ideally we would have a private donor that would write you a blank check and let us build 100,000 square foot building that has a separate space for everything. But I think us being able to find out how, the best opportunity, again, I think what we have is to create the most economical space that serves the most purposes it possibly can. That is the single best way we have of being able to pass this. And if we start having it off because, well, we need this to do this, we need this to do this, then that just increases costs and it makes it a lot less likely for this to be a viable project. It's not going to be everything that everyone wants, but if we can make it the most we can for the most people, then we've got a shot. Right? But none of it's ideal. The timeline's not ideal, the funding's not ideal, the construction costs aren't ideal.
Flexibility is gonna be the key with anything we do. Flexibility is gonna be the key on all parts.
So with the blueprint to build, the large size design was estimated to be $8 million. But they also have, along with this, all of the, like union wages, the requirement for an outside entity to do the
grant
grant
administration.
administration.
That dollar figure did not include any site preparation, so if we have to do any parking lot paving, for example, bringing utility service lines, that kind of thing into it, it didn't include any of that, no sidewalks, no nothing. It also did not include where we were adding the elevated walking track, because that's one thing that we heard from our strategic steering group, that's things that we heard positive in the community. That would be an add-on to this particular facility.
They were meant for downtown areas where on-street parking is already available. What their direction was when they created the program.
Which is great for communities that have downtown spaces that have enough room for that. I'm thankful that most of our downtown is occupied by businesses. But I think it also is part of my frustration with missing the market of a small rural community that's trying to do what it can to support this. We have to shoehorn these ideas into places we can because we don't have it downtown.
160-foot open space.
Yeah, because you can't like renovate an old building with this plan. You have to build a new one, but yeah, they could think it out down, so.
Which how fortunate are we that that's not a problem?
Yeah.
Or that is a problem for our community. I'm very thankful for that, but it's,
Right.
and I think that that's part of my frustration with the blue. Like it just feels like it keeps making it harder and harder for this to be where the increased flexibility would serve us well, being able to pivot and adapt our project, make it fit our community.
It's overall good design. I think everybody that we've talked to likes the layout of the design. I think that architects did a really good job putting the pieces together for the plan. There is a lot of red tape to go through.
We don't have to say we're not still working on it, right? I mean, there's not anywhere where we say we're done. I mean, what can we do to keep going ahead and not necessarily have to tell them we're done?
That we just aren't gonna apply by the 22nd November,
The 14th.
or 14th of November, whatever that date is, that we're gonna wait and maybe apply next year. We gotta raise the money. We can't.
So you can, yeah, you're you have to raise the money. We,
You know, I mean, the 15% won't change. That's the thing I think that won't, just knowing CDBG funds, you have to use Davis Bacon.
Yeah.
That's always been a thing. And since they are federal funds, you know, we had that with the revolving loan fund, that made things a little difficult and why they
Why we
grasped
never
after the
used-
money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think, you know, the major pivot point of the grant is that it's almost a wash. You do all the work for about what, $400,000 instead of 2.5 million at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So perhaps that's the thing to think through and walking away at this point. There's, you know, maybe no need to string them along, maybe just.
Even money.
Yeah, and maybe things change down the road. That doesn't prohibit us from going at it later if something miraculous happens, but.
so if we step away from Blueprint to Build, are you wanting to step away from the Community Activity Center project right now, put it on hold? Or are you wanting us to go forward but go the other path where we go construction manager at risk, we get some drawings together, floor plan and renderings together that we can hand over to the committee that is working toward the vote and that we can use for grant applications and that we can use to talk with private donors as well?
Yes.
You want
Is
to know
that
that?
realistic in the
Yeah.
next 8 weeks?
Well, that's the thing is that in the next 8 weeks, we would need to make a concerted effort, but we have to do that either way. We just need your direction on which way to go. Because if we stay with Blueprint to Build, we'd still have to go hire an architect, they'd still have to push forward, we'd still have to say yes to the grant agreement with North Central Regional, they'd still have to work through all of the paperwork no matter what to try to hit that deadline.
Blueprint to Build does not seem to be realistic.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so if we step away from that, but you still want to move forward with the project and work toward the vote, we still need to have something to show potential donors, we need to have something to show potential granting agencies, we have to have something to show to the voters so that they know what they're voting on, so they're informed.
Do you know what cost incurred is for that portion, going that route with Seymour instead?
The fee was around 6% of the project is what it was to engage. And so at this point in time, what we would start working on would be sending out a request for proposal for those companies and have a short turnaround for them to come back and they could bring that to you so that you could take a look at it. And decide at that point in time. So if we took 6% of 17 million, that's what it would be. If we said we want to drive down and hit a cost point of 15 or a cost point of 12, then you take that times 6%, and that's what your CMRV is going to be.
But none of that's due before vote. Like that would be the whole project cost is that,
Correct.
that's 6%. Okay, so what cost do we incur to get something together or for this group to get something together? Is it zero cost at this point? I mean, before November.
I need to go check on that. I don't want to speak out of turn, and I don't have that information with me, so I need to go check on that.
Generally an optimist and fairly Pollyanna perspective on things. I think that the point that we're at really gives us an opportunity to make some of these adjustments. I think we've been pretty focused on pursuing the path that we were. I think finding out that that's maybe not as viable a path lets us take into consideration not just members of what we're hearing from the strategic doing committee, which I very much, I don't want to dismiss the amount of effort that's been put in there, but we have heard a lot of feedback from our community members expressing concerns. So if we can engage someone that can give us a picture of what this might look like, and again, at a reduced cost, I think that we increase our likelihood of it passing. I think that if we continue on the path that we've been on, this thing is pretty much DOA, and it's not going to get where we need to be. So I think that there really is an opportunity for us to take advantage of now, while still moving forward with this project, to present something that is a much more viable, passable project.
Do you guys have a target number in mind that as you're visiting with members of the community that they say if we get that number cranked down to X, it would be a lot more palatable? Or is that number still a question?
Acacia and $10 million. That's what I'm hearing. You asked what I'm hearing.
Okay.
That's what I'm hearing. I don't know that that's feasible or viable, but that's what I've heard. And I think honestly, the cost is more negotiable than the vacation piece.
Hmm.
Do we have enough direction to move forward? We'll continue to move forward, expect that this will come back again to you in 2 weeks with a lot more information, go on.
I am very appreciative of the information that's been brought forward thus far. And I really appreciate the work that you and the group are doing with this. So I want to see this.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have the public hearing for the 2026 budget and exceeding revenue neutral rate. The public hearing is now open. This time, we'll allow for staff and public comments. If you do have a comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and speak respectfully, and limit the comments to 3 minutes if possible.
Amber, do you want to introduce?
Yeah, I'll just say first, I mean, you have the memo, but I was gonna add that we hadn't increased the mill levy since 2018 in general. And ever since the R&R started, revenue neutral rate started it with the 2022 budget, and we did maintain that for 22, 23, and 24. So that was a decrease in our mill levy for those 3 years. This was the first year, 2025, that we did maintain our mill levy. So that's an increase in the R&R, but it is not an increase in the mill levy. And then we are suggesting to do the same thing for next year. And by doing that, it will allow us to increase transfers to the equipment reserve and capital improvement projects funds. It will also increase that amount to Cloud Corp for economic development. It also includes 3% cost of living adjustment for all the employees and a part-time animal control officer. In addition, it should add a little bit to our reserves, but no major changes in the budget operation lines, just a slight, maybe 5% increase.
Are there any other staff comments? And public comments?
Okay. All right, thanks. I moved here 3 years ago and with my family, I've got 4 children. Actually total 6 grandkids. And our mortgage initially moving out here was $911 a month. The next year it went up to $956. And then the following year it went up to $1,253. The problem I'm having is how highly and how fast it's jumping up. It's outpacing what my income increases are by a lot. And I just felt like I needed to say something. We bought our house for $107,000. They asked for $115,000, and I just saw the appraisal on that sheet said my house is now worth $144,000. But if anything, it's worth less than that. It's over 100 years old. It was built in 1913, and the cost to maintain it are exceeding what its value is. I feel. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have any other public comments this evening?
Is there anything on the chat? Doesn't appear to be anything on chat or whoever's online want to speak.
You see the breakdown, I guess, and not pertaining specifically to us, but Cloud County Community College, maintained their mill levy. They had their meeting last night, and there's hearings for, the county on the 15th, the River Valley Extension District on the 15th, and, USD 333 on the 8th, looks like. Us and the college are the only ones that are not proposing to increase the mill levy, just to maintain the mill levy. And because of, it is, I guess, more of a strain on citizens in that property values have gone up, which means our taxes have all gone up. Our mills are still the same. We're not, as far as what is being levied, I guess. But in general, because in Concordia, all of us are paying property taxes based on all of those collective mills, everybody's gonna feel that. Have anything? All right, the public hearing is now closed. Next is the action agenda, resolution 2025-2210, levy property tax rate for exceeding revenue neutral rate.
I would move to approve resolution 2025-2210.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Lambert, second by Commissioner Hutchison to approve resolution 2025-2210. Any further discussion?
I would want to clarify, I absolutely appreciate the increased cost. I think that as a commission, as Amber stated, we've worked really hard to maintain our mill levy. I don't necessarily like the idea of not adhering to the revenue neutral rate, but it's more expensive to maintain my house. It's also a lot more expensive to maintain a city. I think that we've had several commissioners in my brief tenure who ran specifically to address budgetary issues. And then once they found themselves in office and worked through the budget process, realized just how efficient the city is ran. I think that's really a testimony to not just our city manager, but all our department heads that work really hard to be as efficient with the resources that we have, to be good stewards of those resources. So in my opinion, kind of the revenue neutral rate, exceeding that is a bit of a compromise of trying to be a good steward of maintaining our mill rate, but also knowing the values are increasing and being able to try to do more for the city of Concordia through increased funds while not exceeding that range. So.
And Chuck, I'd echo your comments. I think, originally it was this all went into effect after COVID. Since COVID, there's been I looked at 39.7% increase in construction costs, and 21% increase in labor. And we were able to absorb a lot of that and kind of do what revenue neutral was supposed to do, which is kind of trim down and cut the fat. At this point, if you don't take that float, that's going to start. There's already potholes that aren't filled. That only increases. And yeah, I think I get frustrated too, not only with that, but with the cost of groceries and everything. Everything is so high. That if we don't do this, then it's really becomes of what's on the chopping block. Not what do we add, but what is on the chopping block. So
Physiologically speaking, you can only cut so much fat before we start getting into muscle. And so we're pretty close to starting to chew away exactly what you're saying, to chew away what we're actually selling.
We've experienced already things come in a lot higher than what we anticipated in these last couple of years. And yeah, we won't be able to keep up with that if we don't maintain.
I think maintenance is expensive and the cost of replacement.
Any other comments?
Nobody ever tells you you did good when you lowered the mill levy, but I've been there, been through it both ways.
Yeah.
They don't tell you thanks for lowering. And we're keeping it the same, so.
I have a question, Justin. This vote calls for a roll call vote.
Yes.
Amber kind of looked it up and it said it states that everyone's name should be called and.
Right, so usually it's the ward clerk, just whoever needs to, just do a roll call vote, so we'll call each person's name. No, yeah, you're
I've
right.
done this before.
Yeah.
So. What calls for the vote though? I just ask each person.
Motion's been made and seconded, so.
So the name is second.
Yeah, so
Okay, so
we're ready to vote by roll. Okay, so. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lamberts.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hash.
Yay.
Commissioner Wentz.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Next, we have approval of the 2026 budget.
Move to approve the 2026 budget as presented.
Second,
We have a motion by Commissioner Lambert, second by Commissioner Hatch to approve the 2026 budget as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next, we have the minutes of the August 20th, 2025 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of the August 2025 meeting.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wentz, second by Commissioner Hutchison to approve the minutes of August 2025. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next is appropriation ordinance number 16.
I move to approve appropriation ordinance number 16.
second,
We have a motion by Commissioner Hutchison, second by Commissioner Hash to approve appropriation ordinance number 16. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next, we have NCRPC professional service agreement for the Blueprints Build Green.
I move to not approve the professional services agreement with NCRPC.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hutchison, second by Commissioner Wentz to not approve the professional services agreement with NCRPC. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, next we have Campbell and Johnson professional service agreement for the streets projects.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is an agreement with Campbell and Johnson for professional services to combine East Seventh from Matthew Street to the east side of Sports Complex and Industrial Street from 6th to 8th Street. With the rebid of the mill and overlay on 11th between Highland Drive and the West City limits and Highland Drive between 11th and Sunflower Circle. That was previously been rejected in hopes of getting a better price and increasing the amount of work with the increasing the amount of work being performed. This agreement will include plans, contract documents, technical specifications, estimate. Construction cost permits as required, advertising of bid letting, conduct the bid letting, prepare tabulations and bid recommendations, and construction observation during the process.
I have a question on
Yeah.
Gloucester Street. Will that take the parking or parking?
The
lot?
parking will be separate from that. Are you talking about, between 7th and 8th?
Eighth?
Yeah, so they would be responsible for the parking lot.
Do
We
they
would just
plan
the
to do
street.
that? Do
What's
they
that?
plan to do that in tandem?
Yeah, I'll get with, the owner.
But we have a commitment that they'll do that in tandem?
They sound like they were pretty committed to it before, So.
because it doesn't line up.
They've been asking for the last 3 years to have that done, and so the one thing that we talked about was to get, include it in our design, but then give them the separate price for that
Yeah.
portion of the design and that portion of the construction, so it could all be done as one project, but then they would pay for that portion of the project. So once we propose that to them, then they'll be able to say yes or no, we're in, we're out. If you're out and don't pay it, then we have two options, we leave it out or we do it for them.
We do have that option though to go back, okay.
Any other questions?
I move to approve the city manager to sign the agreement for professional services with Campbell and Johnson for street projects to be paid through a combination of bonding and special highway funds.
Second,
We have a motion by Commissioner Hutchison, second by Commissioner Wentz. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I,
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next is the updated traffic light, College Drive and Lincoln Street.
So this upgrade will be identical to the one at Sixth and Lincoln Street. But we did an update on. Traffic light moved up quickly in the traffic light upgrade list as the components of the cabinet become obsolete to replace. This intersection will require 2 fisheye detection cameras, unlike the Sixth Street traffic light, as the intersection is much larger. The upgrade will also include removal of the old detection cameras, Accurix Smart City ITS unit, upgrades of APS buttons, 2 new 16-inch pedestrian lights, a new Curix blade controller, and a new cabinet state relay. Quotes were initially obtained several months ago and resubmitted the August 20th, 2025 to reflect the updates and pricing. Phillips Southern didn't resubmit an updated quote, but rather they said they would honor the original quote submitted May 15th, 2025. As they came in slightly lower than LNS, it is my recommendation to award Phillips Southern the installation process.
I didn't see a timeline in the memo. Do you, if approved tonight, how quickly?
If it's approved tonight, I'll tell them tomorrow.
And then when can they mobilize to get it?
It'll just be in their time frame, but LNS or Gady's typically will start ordering stuff, and then it'd be up to Phillips Southern. They both need to work together, as Gady's does the cabinet work, and Phillips Southern would be doing the installation.
Okay.
So
like 2 months?
I'm hoping less than that.
Okay.
I'm hoping less than that. I can give you a better timeline once I let them know they're approved. So, but I'm hoping it's before the end of this year for sure, and I'm hoping that the next couple months. The others are as well.
I move to approve the purchase of traffic signal equipment from Gady Sales Company for $26,484 and installation by Phillips Southern Electric for $11,500 to be paid out of CIP.
So a motion by Commissioner Hutchison, second by Commissioner Lambert. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I,
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And next we have the ambulance change orders.
Mayor and Commissioners, good evening. After the approval on the July 2nd meeting, I had a pre-build meeting with the sales rep from Osage. Kept him here for quite a while. Just tired of hearing about safety stuff. And that was one of the big points on this was making the truck more reflective. So doing away with the paint stripes on down the side of the ambulance and replacing them with reflective, so that at night when headlights hit the side of the truck, you see it from a very long ways away. And then including the back. In the picture design, you'll see that there used to be a middle white line and a bottom white line. Well, with the reflectiveness of the decals, we was able to reduce the bottom white line, helping us save a little money there. And it still gives us way better visibility in the back of the truck. We've gone from just a simple lap belt to a 6-point harness That 6-point harness allows you to like stand up and move over, not fully stand up, not for someone like me. But shorter people for sure, you can stand up and reach out. Hoping that will encourage the guys to use seatbelts in the back more. I know with the lap belts, you're on and off every time you want to move. I myself have been in an ambulance crash before, so anything I can do to make it a little safer in the back, I want to do for the guys. The big deduction that we had off of there was the HVAC system. They're very expensive. They cost a lot of electricity to run. They very rarely shut off sitting out in the ambulance bay, keeping the truck at a temperature. It's just an inefficient, thermally inefficient vehicle that just constantly loses or gains the heat and cold. And those units just run and they just don't last. They're not built like an HVAC unit for a house. They're like a window air conditioner. And they wear out. They're very expensive. So that was definitely something I decided to cut out of the truck. I did add a bigger bumper to the front of the truck. There's a lot of good reviews on if you hit a deer that it really doesn't do any damage to the front of the vehicle, even at highway speeds. It protects it very well. That added big bumper can be multiple uses for accident scenes. You can literally use it to put up against a vehicle to keep that vehicle from rocking if it's up on its side. In addition, with big tow hooks, you can strap it to the front of the truck to prevent the vehicle from being able to move back and forth while you're trying to work in it. Same thing with the back of the truck. We added 2 large anchor points for either towing the truck out of the mud, because we have had those get stuck before, or you can use it as an anchor point for rescue situations. And all of those did increase the amount slightly, roughly $4,000 or $5,000. So that's why I came back tonight, was to get the approval for that additional money. Any questions about it?
I appreciate the knowledge that you are putting into this.
Trying very hard to get it right the first time, so the next truck, if I had to make a change, it would be very simple and easy to just keep rolling with, because I want the truck to be set up exactly the same as much as I can, so that when you're not getting in the back of an ambulance, you're not which cabinet was that in, you know, it's, I didn't pull that one.
Is there any, I guess, drawback with not having that HVAC system?
When you first get in the truck, it's not going to be at the desired temperature in the summertime. In the wintertime, we keep our bay at 60, 65 degrees. So when the heater kicks in, it's going to warm up to 75, 80 degrees pretty quick if you need it that warm. In the summertime, it cools off fairly quick. It doesn't have that extra air conditioner in it, but it still has the coil up on top that runs a very large air conditioner in them, so it cools it off pretty quick. By the time we have a patient in the back, it's really not going to affect that patient and their environment in the truck. If we were parking our truck somewhere out and about in the sun at gas stations like they do in larger cities, that would give them the opportunity to plug in and sit in their truck in a indoor temperature instead of 100 degrees or 30 degrees. But for us, it's really not a necessary thing.
I move to approve the ambulance change order from Osage Emergency Services Supply in the amount of $4,680.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lambert, second by Commissioner Wentz, to approve the ambulance change order from Osage Emergency Service Supply for $4,680. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have the KDOT Community Charger Pilot Program.
And Commissioners, this is a grant that we've been working on for a couple of years. We started back in September 23 with an application for an electric vehicle charging station grant. Been working on it with KDOT ever since. We did end up with a pause between federal administrations on this grant because it was tied back to environmental concerns. And in June, we received the actual grant agreement. So in between that time, KDOT worked with the design engineer on all of the projects that they had applications approved for. And they went through and vetted the design and got it honed down to what they felt that they needed. It will still work within our 6th Street parking lot to the west of the Brown Grand. You recall when we built that, we put conduits underground in anticipation of a future EV charging station. We did that. That parking lot was done, I want to say back in 22. So anyway, we were awarded the grant in June 24, June 25, we received the grant agreement. We're now putting that forward to you. Again, have had quite a bit going on recently here. And anyway, KDOT's ready to move forward with this. For this grant, they will take care of the bid letting and securing the vendor that will install the electric vehicle charging stations. They'll choose which charging stations go in as far as what manufacturer. They will be level 2 charging stations. There will be 4 ports in there. So these will be similar to the charging station there's one out at Farm Country Ford. There's one going in, I think, the building that Lucas and Sarah Shady bought, that was the old quilt shop that they put the paint studio back in. I think there's one going in there as well. The ones that are now installed in front of CJ's Car Wash are the fast charging stations. So those are different. Those ones would allow folks to charge in approximately 30 minutes. These are going to take about 2 hours. So our intent with these was the slower ones that would encourage people to patronize our downtown venues and stores and spend some time downtown. So KDOT will select the vendor for construction. They'll also select the vendor for a 5-year maintenance and operating period. I did talk with KDOT and I did find out that we can contract that out to another entity if we wanted. Recall back in 23, when we originally made this application, our goal was not to make money off the electricity sold. Our goal was to partner with an entity that knew more about this stuff than we did, but to offer as a service to encourage travelers to stop in downtown. That was our goal. Our gain from the patronization of our local businesses, increase in sales tax revenue. So now this grant changed things, and if we stayed the receiving entity on it, then we would end up with any profit gain from the electricity sold. So again, KDOT will allow us to subcontract that within that 5-year period. They have to stay within those terms. Once the 5-year period is over, if we've kept it, then once that 5-year period is over, we could subcontract that out as well. So there are some options. We don't have to stay in this business in order to have these charging stations involved. There is one other component to this, and this was back in 2023 when we were exploring this option before this particular grant became available. We entered into a lease agreement with Francis Energy out of Oklahoma. They were going to help us apply for one of those NEVI grants or community facility charging station grants that was available at that time, and they had to show that they had secured lease property to be able to apply for that grant. Therefore, and in that lease agreement, there is a clause that allows us to terminate that with 90 days notice. And so if you choose to proceed with this KDOT Community Charger Pilot Program grant, we will need to terminate the lease with Francis Energy for the ground lease so that we have control of that property for this purpose. So kind of 2 parts to that. Are there any questions?
So we can do the maintenance on it, or we can subcontract, or we can contract this out.
Right. So basically we have the option to stay in control of the charging stations. KDOT chooses the vendor to install, and that same vendor is going to get the 5-year maintenance and operations agreement per this grant agreement. That's KDOT's directive. We can keep that, and we can work with that maintenance vendor to make sure that it's up at 97% runtime and make sure that the card readers work and all that. Or we could subcontract out our portion to another entity, and then they would work directly with that vendor that KDOT selected for maintenance and operations for 5 years. So we have those 2 options.
What do you mean by our portion?
Our responsibility to the grant agreement. So we are the grantee. We're receiving the grant funds for this. We own the property. So they put the charging stations on, and then we would be required to work with the maintenance and operations vendor to make sure that the charging stations were running that 97% time. We would receive a portion of the profits made from the sale of electricity. If we didn't want to be in that business, then we could subcontract that out to another entity. They would keep the profits from the electricity sold, and they would work directly with the vendors of maintenance and operation during that 5-year period.
After the 5 years, since this is a pilot program.
Mhm.
After the 5 years, we would be responsible for 100% of the maintenance, whereas within that 5 years, the grant covers that amount. Correct. So at that time, if they were
Let's say that.
not being used ever, or, I mean, depending on what that situation is at that 5-year point, we have no other obligation to them.
Right, after 5 years, there's no other obligation to the grant or to KDOT.
So they could actually be taken out.
They could. Conversely, if they're being used and things are working well, we could renew a maintenance and operations agreement with that vendor, or we could find a different vendor.
There won't be any problem terminating the vendor we already have.
So we don't have a vendor per se. We have this company that we had given a ground lease to only. That's our only obligation to them, is the ground lease. And there's a clause in there that with 90 days notice, we can terminate it for convenience. So we can say, we were awarded this grant with KDOT, we've accepted this grant, they're going a different route, meaning they're selecting the vendor. So we can't tell them we want to use Francis because we're already in agreement with them. They won't let us do that. And they knew up front when we applied for the grant that we had been working with Francis. The grant's application included a scope of project and required us to answer some questions. And you can see that throughout here, that all of our answers were based on our work with Francis. KDOT was fully aware of that when they awarded us this grant agreement. But we also knew that we couldn't use them if we were awarded this grant agreement, and Francis was well aware of that as well.
We started off, there was one, now there's 3, this will be the 4th. But like you said, one's a fast charging, and they're all located in, I would say, far enough from each other that it still is,
And this
appealing.
grant, understand it, then we'll have to keep like the restrooms at the plaza open
Yes.
up 24/7.
So one of the things that these, when they put in EV charging stations, so when you go into a gas station, a lot of gas stations are open 24/7 now. They have food, they have restroom access. EV charging stations don't necessarily come with a convenience store, and so their expectation is that you have access to those kind of things. So yes, the fact that we have the plaza restrooms downtown that could be open 24/7 is a positive and does help us to get these grants.
And if we sign it, we have to keep them open. I guess the question then becomes we've seen windows become open, they become homes for people. And it's very destructive to property. So does that destruction outweigh the benefit of adding access to electric charging when we have private market fulfilling that? And just knowing the type of damage that has happened and will continue to happen, especially as we continue to see folks that are transient and unhoused coming into our community, I don't know if the benefit's gonna outweigh the damage that's gonna be done.
We've had concern in being able to identify who's going into that restroom and causing the damage, right?
We do have cameras there now.
We also then, I wondered about putting some sort of door dinger in place that would notify law enforcement that they could look out the window and see if there's a car charging or not. If there's a car charging in the middle of the night, and that might be the patron using our public restroom. If it's not, And maybe somebody gets up to no good, at which point there may be benefit to having a discussion. So what they're doing in the restroom, 4 o'clock in the morning.
We do have cameras that shine over there that we monitor 24/7 in dispatch already.
Is there a public bathroom in the police station?
Do you want there to be one?
That's more conveniently located.
Public restroom available upon request.
Well, so in bigger cities, which we're not, but in bigger cities, there's nowhere you can go and use the restroom unless you're a patron. And you have to go get the code to punch in to use the restroom. And that's just the norm. But you can get in, you just have to have the code. And anybody should use it.
And I think that's,
To a head count.
I think that's what a lot of our downtown business have noticed, a lot more signs of that recently, of restrooms for patrons only, customers only.
So could we make our bathrooms coded?
If you make your bathrooms coded, then you have to be able to give the code to people that need to use them.
But after hours, like if they're only coded after hours, so if they're unlocked, they have a code during the after hours time. You would have to contact somehow. to get the code.
I've had to submit, just show a receipt. And there's like one of those QR code things on it and you can get in that way.
Like there's a scanner on the door lock that allows you to show receipts,
Yeah.
like if you bought electricity, then you'd scan for
Yeah.
charging your vehicle. then
You
you'd
have a
scan it.
receipt from your paying for your,
I'll have to look into that, I hadn't heard of that.
well, that's what they do in Europe. I mean, they do.
Again, we're getting to,
How to make.
we're trying to bring electricity to a door. All for no financial gain at all. Just, I mean, and now that we do see more private investment, originally when we looked at this, there was one.
That was at the Ford dealership, so that
Yeah.
wasn't close to downtown.
Yeah. I think we're making it smart. And just knowing the destruction, what is in those bathrooms at night is pretty bad. And it's only getting worse, will only get worse with what we're seeing downtown.
Can we do that at the parks too?
Excuse me?
Can we do that at the parks too? The parks bathrooms get damaged worse than private.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's just, yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I don't know what to say about that or what to do about that, but I don't want to invite more.
With I mean, I have the same thought with the Shavies having put them in. We didn't know that was gonna happen when this grant was applied for. A lot of work has gone into doing the research and putting everything together and filling everything out. But now that we have 3 locations, this would be the 4th, although it's on the opposite end. It still poses, not to our benefit, and the other one is still downtown located. So we have stuff available. If electric cars continue to be such a hot topic, though, that might not eventually be enough. And then this is a missed opportunity. However, I think it'll be a while before we get to that.
It is interesting to me that they're tying an open 24-hour restroom to a lot of these grants. This seems, again, for the places they're trying to make sure that these chargers are in, it's not really conducive to the communities that they're being put in.
We did a lot of advocacy with KDOT. I will tell you, especially when CJ's Car Wash was going in for that very point. The grants were written for large truck stops along the interstate, which were not. Our terrain is small lots for commercial and I know that for that one, we specifically advocated with them that those EV charging stations and car wash were right next to a 24/7 convenience store and gas station right across the alley. And could they please count that? Because in our community, that makes sense. And it was denied. And so honestly, when the Gordons put that in, they put that in without any grant funding. That was their 100% private investment, which is incredible in this community to see that. So we want them to be successful. They took that chance.
But then again, we don't necessarily want to be in competition with that.
No, and really, we wouldn't be in competition with that style of charging station, because those are the fast, those are the people that are getting in and getting out. The target market for this, again, was people that are gonna stay, if they're gonna go to the movies, go to a show at the Brown Grand, go out to eat, do some shopping downtown, see them in the plaza. There's a place for them, maybe they are attending church, maybe they're attending a funeral, all that right around in there. Convenience chargers, I think is what they're termed now. And it's okay. We are really fortunate here to have a lot of grant opportunities, especially in the last several years. We seize the moment, we go after them. We've been very blessed to receive a lot of them. It's okay if you don't want to accept the grant, that's fine.
I want to accept a grant, I just don't want to create an additional liability for the facility that we've already invested in. Again, it seems odd to me that there's, I mean, I hear you and I understand that, but
I'm surprised they let it. They would count the plaza because it's,
More than an alley,
It's,
more than crossing an alley.
yeah,
It's
it's
nice.
3 blocks away.
Yeah.
but I think the radius was 4 blocks, being within 4 blocks is what you had to have.
So while I have a deep appreciation for the work you've done, and a lot of appreciation for the folks who've moved forward, in their private ventures, and with that, though, I'd like to make a motion to deny the grant agreement with KDOT for the community charger pilot program, and cease moving forward with the project.
Second,
We have a motion by Commissioner Hutchison, second by Commissioner Wentz. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
With
it'd
that,
still be prudent to cease the land lease with Francis
yeah,
or.
I think it follows, if the rationale that the commission has to deny this grant is because we're concerned about potential future damage to the restrooms, if we leave the ground lease in place with Francis Energy, it leaves the door open for them to go ahead and invest in chargers, which would create the same challenge. So if that's the reason for denying the KDOT grant, I would recommend going ahead and terminating the ground lease with Francis Energy.
but if they aren't getting a grant, they wouldn't have that requirement
For the 24-hour bathrooms.
from the 24-hour bathroom. Would they?
They would not. They would not.
So if they want to put it in, as long as it's not costing us anymore.
Do we want to move forward with that though, now that we already have 3 in the community?
I think it would be good for us to have an additional charger down there. I think there are church and funeral services where there could be a benefit, or somebody attending a show at the Brown Grand. I think that there could be a lot of benefit to having a charger.
I don't think they'll be used much, but
I would like the opportunity. I just don't want to create the liability. I mean, that's the biggest concern that I have. And I don't think that there's necessarily much of an issue with competition. As somebody who's gonna patron a certain business is gonna do that, the fact that they can charge there as well. I don't know what cross contamination there would be there, but
well, and only, well, the Ford, but the other 2 commercial ones are on the highway. They'll get used by people
yeah,
on the highway more than this. People won't even know it's there.
Do you think there is a desire for them to move forward without a grant?
We honestly have not heard from them in over 8 months.
I would just wonder if we terminate,
Yeah.
we still have everything under the ground. If there's an opportunity in the future that's, and we see more of a need, then we can move forward. I think we go ahead and terminate at this point. So I'll make that motion to authorize the city manager to give notice of termination of lease agreement with Francis Energy.
Second,
We have a motion by Commissioner Hutchison, second by Commissioner Lambert to authorize the city manager to give notice to terminate the lease with Francis Energy. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Build Kansas Matching Grant Fund Agreement for the box hanger.
One second to get there. These grant agreements are several pages long. Let's go through this.
and to read.
136.
That's what starts. I'd say put the blank one in there, and then we put the in there. All right. After that. That's
151.
151.
Yeah.
Okay, come on. Alrighty, Mayor Commissioners, this has to do with the box hangar that construction was recently completed and it's under lease right now. When we had built the box hangar, we received a multi-year AIP grant over the course of several years. Those are our normal entitlement funds that come through the FAA. There was also some bipartisan infrastructure law money that came through, and then there's a supplemental fund that was created as part of that flow through from federal to state on bipartisan infrastructure law funds. That flow through to the state is called Build Kansas funds, and those we're eligible for those grants to be the local match portion to the AIP to the BIL funding. So when we bring an FAA grant to you under the AIP or AIG grant, those are usually 90-10 or 95-5 matches. So think of this one as this is that 5 to 10% match is what these are. So we have we received 2 of these grant agreements for you for your consideration, and they're associated with 2 FAA AIP grants. If you'll recall, those AIP grants that you previously approved were for $113,000 a piece. This is for the matching funds of it. Both of these Build Kansas Fund grant agreements are for $12,555 a piece. These were ones that we hadn't anticipated originally in the project. Knowing that they are multi-year grants and they're look-back grants, we've now included those in our budget for this fiscal year 25 and for 26. So we know that they're budgeted out and allocated and incorporated. There will be one more grant next year that we'll take a look at. It'll be for a smaller amount, and then that'll finish out the total payment of the box hangar for us. And then we'll be able to start building our AIP funds for the next project at the airport. So today I'd ask for your approval to approve the Build Kansas matching fund agreements, both 008 and 012, both of the amounts of $12,555, and authorize us to sign those grant agreements.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hutchison, second by Commissioner Lambert. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next we have the manager's report. Last week we held a KDOT Transportation Alternative Project kickoff. This is another grant that we received. This was like a year of grants, guys. This is the $1 million sidewalk grant that we received that will improve pedestrian access and safety around Concordia Middle School and connect it through the sports complex and to the elementary school. Kickoff meeting went well. Shane and I sat in on it. The timeline is being pushed back a little bit for construction. They were looking at spring of 2027. So we discussed if they can get that done during spring break, that would be great because they'll be replacing sidewalks right along the west side of the middle school and the south side of the middle school. So we told them if they couldn't get it done over spring break, then we really need to push the start date to right after school is out in May. So it's not to interfere with pickup and drop off traffic and teacher parking and bus utilization. So we're looking at probably a May 2027 construction start date for that project. We also talked a little bit about the proposal to, instead of the sidewalk going on the south side of 7th Street, putting it on the north side, and Shane and Jason went out and took a look at that for utility conflicts and just ease of construction and how many construction easements we were going to take. And KDOT did authorize us to go ahead and proceed with moving that sidewalk to the north side. What that also does is that also helps us out with the community activity center at Rager Field, and it goes ahead and puts a sidewalk in place there at 7th and Cloud. So kind of a threefold project. This project with the construction date in 2027, Shane and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the mill and overlay for 7th and Doster will occur before the sidewalk is in place. Would that be accurate?
My schedule for the 7th Street project will be complete plans by the end of this fiscal year with a bid letting in the early part of 2026 with hopeful construction during the summer of 2026 when school is out there. So we'll be hopefully a full year in advance of the sidewalk project.
There wouldn't be any conflict in terms of doing the sidewalk project later.
None. In fact, I will most likely, we are also partnering with Vinesh to do their survey for the sidewalk project. So I've already made contact with them. Before we finalize any plans for the 7th Street portion at Doster Street, I'll coordinate with them just to make sure we're not doing anything that's repetitive vice versa, something we would do in the street that they were already planning or the other way around. But that way you're not paying for something twice.
And it's so much safer to do the north side and have them cross later. Just because natural traffic flow during pickup. So thank you for making that change.
It also is less landowners, less intrusive, and you've already got the sidewalk on the south side of a lot of 7th Street, so now you'll end up with sidewalks on both sides of 7th Street, a lot of the way down, which I think is an advantage.
It will add one pedestrian crossing at 7th and Cloud Streets. We will keep the pedestrian crossing at 7th and Donster because there are still walkers that need to get to that southwest area. So that'll stay in place. So we'll have some changes coming up, but catching it this early is great. And we really appreciate Jason working with Finish on the project too. And it's all kind of dovetailing nicely in that area. It would be good improvements in that area. So anyway, that project is moving forward. We're staying in contact with the school district administration, so they're informed on what's happening, and they'll be a part of our progress meetings. They'll get to help us review the design, so they'll be informed all the way because they are greatly affected by the project as well. You'll notice Bruno isn't here tonight. He is representing the city of Concordia today in Wichita at the Kansas Association of Floodplain Managers Conference, and he is a key presenter on our Lomer project that we successfully completed. And that was made official. FEMA made the Lomer official on August 22nd of this year. So those 200 structures are now out of the floodplain. We have 35 remaining. That's really exciting. That's a huge win for Concordia. We were going back through the history. I think his presentation was titled Years in the Making, Concordia's Floodplain Project with 3 Dam Surprises. So anyway, he's ending it with 3 surprises.
What a banger of a conference that must be. Bet you it's still going too. That presentation, he started it too.
He's not to be able to see it, but interestingly, what we found in the research is that clear back in 1908, the city commission at that time was studying flooding effects in the northeast part of the city, and by 1910, they had directed the city streets and alleys person to do a study on what could be done to limit the flooding. And so in 1910, they were already recommending the 20th Street Dam be built, which was really interesting. And then we fast forwarded to 1976, 87, when the floodplain maps and flood insurance rate program comes into play after the flood of 1950. There were a couple other flooding events that happened in around the 90s. And then 96, they started saying, we need a new dam. 1999, we need a new dam. 2001, we need a new dam. Finally got the approval around 2001 to start work on design of that project, and it wasn't complete until 2015. So this truly is decades in the making, and even then, 2015, then FEMA updated the maps in 2014 before we were done completing the dam project, and so then we weren't able to weren't able to incorporate the positive effects of that on our floodplain, and so it still negatively impacted property owners. And so now, being able to say we have letter of map revision and we can now count the 21st Street Dam and the Plum Road Dam, we can utilize those effects along with the capacity of our storm sewer and make positive change for our property owners is really cool. So anyways, we're really neat, really proud of them for presenting at the state conference today. So I'm excited. Kind of along that line, still talking about Bruno, we did interview 4 finalists for building inspector this past week. We hope to make an offer by the end of this week, working through the background check process right now. So appreciate everybody that was able to participate in that. That's all I have to share tonight. Happy to answer your questions. Staff reports.
So it's been very busy at the police department, but we're excited to kick off Cops and Cones again this year at the 26th, geez, I'm sorry. The 26th, the day before Fall Fest. So we'll be handing out ice cream along with, they've asked us to cook the hamburgers this year again for the supper. So we're pretty excited about that, to reach back out to the community and hand some ice cream out. So
It's homecoming week.
yes, yeah, so we're gonna be very busy, but yeah, so we're.
Comments and reports. Want to start? Nothing for me.
Somebody asked me a question and it kind of got me thinking. I've noticed a lot of like vegetation growing in our like curbs, gutters, and the streets. And to me, that seems like it's only gonna accelerate the deterioration of that. So wondering how to maybe being able to address that and to stay ahead of it, whether that's, if not through chemical, then torching it off or something like that, but would be seem like maybe save us money in the long run.
Yeah.
Spray. I mean, what's that on private properties? I mean, it's right up to it.
So is that, but it's not property, it's, I mean, I try to maintain mine in front of my house because I just want it to look nice. But that's not private property.
No, it's property, but yeah, we can get around and try to get some of that under control.
I just worry about it compromising the integrity there, just another pothole that we're gonna have to pay to fix.
We're in the process of fixing some storm drains right now, but as soon as we get that, then.
And we talked enough about it, but that's, everything's cost more and there's always more work to do. We have aging infrastructure. It all costs money. So we are trying to be good steward of taxpayer dollars.
Right.
There's just more projects than there are time and money.
Yeah, I mean, with that being said, the parking lot across from here is not owned by the city, correct? But during,
The main one that the box trucks park in overnight is owned by the city, then there's a little curb and the part between there and the building is not owned by the city.
there's a lot of weeds growing up in that parking lot. I believe in the past, before Fall Fest, those weeds have been taken care of maybe by the downtown beautification. No,
Previous street superintendent was very generous with the city's efforts to keep that area parking lot clean, even though it's not ours.
any other comments or reports?
Well, it's, people keep asking me or telling me about concerns, for Bruno, really, but the Christian church thrift shop, that building, the back of it is, the bricks are falling off, and of course that piece of glass is still in the window. And with Fall Fest coming, it just concerns me too. The Sherwin-Williams building, which also is falling down, and I'm afraid if they do, they're gonna take other buildings around, and then the neighbors on that house on 6th Street that they're supposed to be repairing, they're complaining about still looking at it and nothing being done.
I know Bruno's been in contact with both of those downtown building owners, so we'll follow up when he
Yeah.
returns on that.
I don't know that contact has been sufficient in the past.
No, it's time for enforcement now. The last contact I made with them, it's my understanding that it was, here's your threshold and our next step is condemnation, which is unfortunate, but yes.
That's all I had.
Entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lambert, second by Commissioner Hutchison to adjourn. Any further discussions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
I didn't mean to take that away from you if you wanted to make that motion, Christia.